The rank and file of the medical profession amounted to an army of more than 35,000, represented by a hugely influential professional body, the British Medical Association.
The BMA was called, many years later, the shock troops of the middle classes. There was a genuine, fierce battle.
On the first day of January 1948, the BMA declared war on Bevan's socialist experiment and set out to persuade every doctor in the land to join them.
We are fighting against the enslavement of the profession and are engaged in a life or death struggle for our freedom and independence.
How long has all the wisdom on this matter resided with this ridiculous theorist who swaggers the Ministry of Health? He's so full of his own importance that he's prepared to pit his wits against the accumulated experience of this council, which is to be butchered like a Welshman's holiday.
Leading the BMA's opposition was a famously charismatic and outspoken figure to rival Bevan himself. Aspiring Conservative politician and secretary of the BMA, Dr. Charles Hill.
He was extraordinarily persuasive in his discussions and utterances. As an officer of the British Medical Students Association, I saw him just as I attended meetings at BMA House. At first I swallowed really almost totally the BMA view about the potential iniquities of a whole-time salaried service, which is the thing that they feared most. And Charles Hill was particularly outspoken about control of the profession by government.
We all want better health services and better health. But in organising them, let's make sure that your doctor doesn't become the state's doctor. Your servant, the government servant.
The fear was that this was state medicine. They wouldn't be freed. The idea that doctors would be somehow manacled within a state system of medicine was completely anathema to them.
The BMA could not have had a more powerful spokesman for their cause than Charles Hill, because he was the most famous doctor in the country, dispensing medical wisdom to over 14 million people every week as the BBC's radio doctor.
What can you do if you get an attack of influenza? Well, there's no panacea, there's no golden remedy. Don't believe all the neighbours say about what such and such a stuff has done to them. Bed, warmth, extra hot water bottle, extra blanket so that you perspire.
He had this very sort of gravelly, avuncular tone and talked to people about having their bowels open and sitting on the throne and so on. That's the way I remember it. And people thought, yes, he's a real family doctor who understands everything that goes on. And they did sort of listen to him.
And remember this, you're not a hero if you go dodging off to work with a cold or influenza. You're only...
He was very reassuring. He was a good father figure, and his voice was modulated and seemed to make sense. I went all the way with Dr. Charles Hill in the early days, until I realised his views on the National Health Service.
Make the doctor not your doctor, but the state's doctor. No longer your friend, your advocate. And you'll have done some damage to medicine that it'll be impossible to repair. The doctors believe that their freedom as a profession and as individuals, that it's your freedom. And that's what they're fighting for.
More than half the BMA's members were GPs who were terrified that the NHS would lower them to the status of medical civil servants. The BMA encouraged them to reject Bevan's Health Act, as it would rob them not only of their independence, but also their livelihood.
Doctors were known as independent contractors. They ran their own lives, they ran their own surgeries, they ran their own practices. And this was what worried them when the talk of state medicine coming in. My husband was his own boss. And if he came under a state organisation, he would cease to be his own boss.
My father was very active in the British Medical Association. The coming of the health service filled him with great uncertainty. They might be led into a system where the doctors became state employees and they became beholden completely to government direction, almost like the military. And I think he was very worried that there could be what we'd call now a dumbing down of medicine.
Don't forget, before the NHS came in, GPs purchased their practice. They had therefore had a capital interest in the practice and hoped that when they retired they would be able to sell the practice to somebody else. So there was a financial reason too.